Hello and welcome to the House of Valentina. I'm Valentina and I am a designer based out of the Atlanta area, and today we are going to be talking about curtain mistakes. Now, I'm not going to just throw you under the bus. I'm going to give you tons of curtain mistakes that you can very easily avoid, and I'm going to give you easy tips and tricks that you'll be able to follow that will help you get your curtains looking fabulous in your home. So I hope that's something that you'll really enjoy. We hope you'll want to stick around, check out some of our playlists about interior design, room makeovers. I think we have a little bit of everything on our channel related to design, of course. So we hope you'll check all those out, hit subscribe, give the video a thumbs up if you are excited about finding out what to do with your curtains and you're like, finally, she's finally doing this video. I've asked her a million times. It is one of my most requested videos, so I thought it'd be really fun to just dive into it and chat a little bit about, how to make your curtains look awesome. Curtains are one of those things in your home that really they're pretty important. It's a little bit like bangs on your hair. Whether you have them or you don't, it makes a pretty big difference on your face. So curtains are kind of like that in your home, and that's why I thought it'd be really good for us to chat about this. So let's dive in, shall we? The mistake number one that I see people making quite often, and it's super easy to avoid, and that is that a lot of times people will buy curtains in synthetic fabrics. And synthetic fabrics, unfortunately, just kind of give off just a downgraded, cheapened kind of look to a space. And since curtains are so important and they really set the mood for your space, your eye naturally goes towards the windows anyways when you're reading a room. It's an immediate thing that really just downgrades a space, no matter how great everything else in the room may be. The quick and easy solution is just to take them down. Let all that natural light just come into your space, and it will just give you a really elevated feel immediately in your room. Now, if you've taken them down and you do want to put something back up, some of the fabrics that I think make really great curtains are cotton. Cotton actually works really, really well. Velvet is another material that really just gives a very sophisticated vibe. You also could look at linen. Linen can be a little bit tricky. I use linen in two different ways. I'll either use a heavier linen that just really fills the room and it's got like this really drapey, gorgeous, frothy kind of feeling to it. Either that, or I'll go the opposite and I will use a linen that is so light and airy that you can still see right to the outside. There's two ways that you can kind of play with those materials. Same with cotton. I would say the same thing with cotton. Velvet, you really kind of want something that's really kind of heavy. I think a light velvet just doesn't read very well in a space. So if you're just getting started, this should be kind of an easier way of getting started. I'll leave all the links for the items that we're featuring in today's video down in the show notes if you are wanting to shop for something new. The second mistake that I see people making quite often is that they buy their curtains too short. A lot of times what I'll see is that people will buy their curtains to where they stop at the bottom of the windowsill. That's the main thing that we're talking about here. Most people will generally have the curtains at least lightly tap the floor or come almost to that floor. But the biggest mistake that's really hard to overcome is when you just buy them to where they're just cut right at the windowsill. That cafe curtain, that sort of cut off kind of look, it just doesn't give off a very high-end feel, and it typically will just really downgrade your entire space, which is really a shame because natural light is one of those things that really adds a lot of value to your room. I think it really makes it look a lot more expensive and high-end to have natural light in your space. And so when your eye immediately goes to that and then you've cut it off, it just, I don't know, it doesn't look very sophisticated. Now, the solution is that you could definitely just simply take them down. That's pretty much for all of these. You're better off with nothing than something that is too short on your window. Now, if you need something for privacy, what I would suggest is looking at maybe a Roman shade, because that's something that you can just simply fill the window with. Because a lot of times you might have something that's underneath it. You may not have the space for a full curtain. And if that's the case, I would look at a Roman shade over a curtain, because I just think that that sort of cut off short look, it just doesn't read very high end, and it's an easy mistake to avoid. The other part of this is that a lot of times people just don't buy the curtains long enough. Just literally, they buy them to where they almost reach the floor but don't quite reach the floor. I think a lot of people are worried about them getting dusty, and so they don't quite get them long enough, or they don't measure the where to hang the curtain rod very well, and so a lot of times that curtain doesn't come all the way to the floor. In the past, I've made that mistake myself. I realized, oh my gosh, it's not long enough, and yeah, you learn that the hard way sometimes. But either way, having them to where there's a gap between the curtain and the floor, that gap, you want to avoid that, just in general. Another mistake that I see people making is that they just hang the curtain rod too low. And this is a question that I get constantly on the comment section here. We get it over on the Facebook group and in the Patreon. You guys are always asking, where am I supposed to hang my curtain rod? So that's a really good question, actually, because it just depends on the window and the space. So a lot of times if you're hanging your curtains right at the top of the trim of the window, it's gonna make the room just feel a lot shorter. So what you wanna do is try to hang that curtain rod as close to the ceiling as you possibly can. Now, if you have trim work, that's where things can get a little bit tricky. I personally would never put a curtain rod into my trim. First of all, it's really hard to do that anyways. It doesn't hang right. You would have a really hard time getting it to do that. So what I'll do is that I'll hang the rod right below whatever the trim work is across the top. That way I get as much height out of the room as I possibly can, and they'll just hang all the way down to the floor. Like we just said. This is a personal pet peeve, and I'm just gonna go there, okay? Because it's just a personal thing for me. I never pair blinds and curtains on the same window. It's just, I feel like you're just imprisoning yourself. It's like bars and then fabric just covering that window. And like I said, I really believe that natural light in your space is really, really important. It really just helps you to feel connected to nature. It helps you feel connected to outside. I think it's healthy to have window light coming into your home. I don't know. I think it not only does it add value to the way that you enjoy the room, but it also brings value to the space. Like I said before, I really believe that natural light is a money maker. It's one of those things that just makes your space feel more high end. So you don't want to cover it with a blind or even a plantation shutter, whatever you've got. I don't think you should put those on the window and curtains. I would really seriously consider one or the other. I personally, generally do not like blinds. I have a hate relationship with them. I feel imprisoned in my space in them, and I never put them into my clients' homes unless they just insist on having them. They're really expensive, and they just block out so much light. If you think about even just the slats, even if it's open, you're taking about half of the window light out of the space. Generally, I would just avoid having blinds on the windows, and if you need something for privacy, then think through some of these other tips and tricks about curtains and check down below, because I'm gonna leave you a lot of links for things that I just really recommend that I think will really work for you. This is another one of my pet peeves, and it's literally the most easily avoidable thing in the world. I just have this thing where I don't want the window to be blocked. So gathering your curtain in the center and tying it is just, oh, I hate that look. I don't understand why. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand. It's just not pretty to me at all, and it doesn't really serve a function to me, because if you need to tie your window back to let light in, then why would you tie it? I don't understand it. I don't understand that one. So I just don't ever gather the curtain in the center of the window, whether you're tying it, or sometimes the curtains will come with the little tie backs that you could tie in the center. I just would never do that. And again, a lot of this comes down to my personal preference that I want to allow as much light as possible into the space. So I wouldn't take the curtain and just sort of gather it in the middle, and basically you're blocking the center of the window. So I just would never do that. Ooh, this is a really good one too, is that a lot of times people don't know what rod to use. And that's a really good question, because it really depends on the style of the room as to which rod I would recommend. A rod can do a lot for the curtains just in general. So if you think about it, if you have a light wall and you have a dark curtain rod, it's gonna stand out more. So sometimes I will use the rod as an element that I want to see the rod. So I'll create contrast with it. Then other times I don't want to see the rod at all, so I'll actually make it the same color as the wall or close to it so that it really just kind of disappears and it's not really having a design voice. So if you think about the material, I think the materials are also really important. I typically try to find something that has a little bit more of an elevated material. I really like an authentic iron. I really think that you can also use brass, actually. That can be really, really beautiful. I try to look for materials that look as close to the authentic material as possible. If you're just getting started, some of the best places to look for curtain rods are places like West Elm. I really like what they have at West Elm. I found that generally everything they have is gonna have a little bit higher end look to it, but it won't have a really high-end price tag. Is it more than Target? Yes. Does Target have some that I would use? Yes. But a lot of times the ones at Target are really, really flimsy. And that's the issue, is that sometimes when you're trying to save money, it actually costs you more in the end, because if it's not really well made, when you're trying to actually use your curtains, a lot of times they're just kind of flimsy, they're wobbly. And so I try to really make sure that when I buy a curtain rod, that I buy one that's gonna really last and it's gonna have a really good quality to it. Restoration Hardware is another place that I think has beautiful curtain rods, but they're really expensive. So if it was me, I would definitely check out West Elm or Pottery Barn, and CB2 is another great place, and Crate and Barrel. That they all have kind of that mid-range where it looks really high-end, but the price tag isn't so high. And investing a little bit more money in something that you're gonna use, I think is something that will really pay off. The next mistake that I see people making a lot is that they just don't have enough fabric. The other day I walked in and my husband was hanging the curtains in our bedroom and I was like, what you doing there, buddy? He had just we have one big window and he was only gonna hang one curtain on one side to go all the way across that big window. And it just doesn't look very high-end to have one curtain per window. You want to really have at least 2 panels for one window. And if you have a really big window, you may want to think about doubling that fabric. Generally, I will just buy double the amount of panels for each side because I really want to get some volume in there. If you're going to hang a curtain, you definitely want it to feel high-end and sophisticated. And so a lot of times if you just don't have enough fabric on the window, it just kind of looks cheap and it doesn't look like there's enough there, and it just ends up kind of looking a little bit flimsy and underwhelming. So I would think about doubling the panels. Think about maybe having 2 panels per side per window. And I know that does cost a little bit more money. It's gonna really give you a really high-end look, because if you go to have curtains custom made for your window, they're not going to only give you just enough to barely cover the window. They would definitely be giving you a lot more volume, and that will really just help your space to feel a lot more high-end. I'm planning on adding some panels even to my own bedroom because I don't like just how kind of there's not enough. There's just not enough there. There's not enough fabric. Even in my own home, I know how it is. You may just not have bought enough, and you just grab some extras and just keep going with it. Oh, this is one that I see. A lot of these are personal preference, and I'm just being completely honest because a lot of times designers are gonna tell you that there's a right and wrong way to do things, when in fact, I believe actually that a lot of this stuff is personal preference. And I'm just being honest because I just feel like some of you are gonna write down in the comments that you don't like what I'm saying, and if you don't, it's completely fine to do whatever you really enjoy, because ultimately you are building out your home, and this is about your pleasure and your delight and your joy, and creating a space that makes your heart skip a beat when you come into it, and if you find it soothing and you find it elegant and it makes you feel your best. That's what this is really about. So I say all that because I'm about to tell you to just skip trendy colors and patterns for your curtains. And that is because I'm a very frugal person and I don't like to spend a lot of money on my curtains. Sometimes I do like to have 2 sets for a room. I really love that. I just think that if I can have it, it's a really nice bonus. I love to have a really nice light linen for a space for the summer and something velvet and really heavy and sophisticated and warm feeling for the winter. But would I ever buy a super trendy pattern with just a big pattern or something really colorful? No. And the reason why is because those colors will come and go. So could you do that? Yes, you definitely can use a color. If you really just want some color in your room, you could definitely do that. Go for a color on your curtains. But personally, I like to have neutrals, and I'd rather switch out the pillows because I feel like that's a much lower investment in my space. I'll just switch out the pillows and maybe a blanket and a small accessory. But the curtains are typically something that costs a lot more money, so I don't want to spend any extra money if I don't have to. For myself, I will typically buy a neutral color for the window treatments and then have some fun with other things. And I do the same when I'm designing rooms for my clients as well. I typically will just go really neutral because then I know they're just gonna get years and years and years out of those. They may never even have to replace them. So I think that that's money well spent, and I just prefer to not have something so trendy. Because I've definitely done trends before, and then I always end up donating those curtains. I never end up keeping them. I've had turquoise and I've had patterns, and yeah, I just never end up keeping them. And so when I've gone neutral with my windows, I've had those same curtains for years, and that's just a personal preference that I would rather spend my money on other things, I guess. The final mistake is related to the tops of your curtains. And this is another question that you guys ask me all the time. What kind of top should you buy? I typically do not like to have a lot of movement around the top. The other thing that you could do is that you can also use the little rings, and that will really stretch your fabric. It'll really give you a lot more volume for your money. So that's a little money-saving tip. I think that the little black rings just look a lot more high-end. It looks a little bit more custom, and you can put those on the tops of your curtains, no matter what kind of style you have, unless you did the ones with the rings. And I've stopped buying those. I stopped buying the ring tops because they just don't look very custom and they don't look very high end. Are they nice to be able to like open and shut the window? Yes, that's why most of us have bought those in the past, because it makes it easier to open and shut the curtain. But instead of doing that, I would do the little rings instead. I typically buy those in black, but you could definitely do those in a brass or in a silver tone. I think that you could definitely use any of those colors, but I would generally just avoid having the big rings that are, in the actual curtain itself. The three styles that I would definitely suggest looking at are the hook belt, the back tab, and the pole pocket. I think that those three styles will definitely look more high-end, more sophisticated, and more custom. I assume that if you clicked on an interior design video that you want that kind of designer, sophisticated look in your home. And when you have a lot of the tabs that are across the top of them, those typically just don't look as high-end, and I generally avoid those and the big rings because I just don't feel like they look super high-end. And I think it's a lot better if you can really kind of squish your fabric together and really give yourself a nice clean look across the top. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. I hope that you've had some fun and you've just found some great inspiration among these tips and tricks. And I hope that it'll just encourage you to create a home that you just absolutely love. Make sure you hit subscribe. Don't forget to give the video a big thumbs up. Let us know down in the comments which one of these tips was your favorite, which one you think you'll definitely be trying to use. And also, if you want to have some more interior design fun, check out our interior design playlist. We also have a styling playlist where we really just show you all kinds of different tips and tricks that you can use in your home as you make it that safe haven, that place that you just love to come back to every single day. That's what we're all about here at the House of Valentina. And yeah, we're excited to have you guys. So cheers, you guys. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.